would argue that what we're going to show you today is also going to help your help desk people quite a bit as well. But remember, we said that Footprints has two cores or disciplines, service core and asset core. Now, don't feel ashamed with what you've got today, being partially a manual process. You've got multiple different tools to accomplish supporting your environment from an IT asset perspective. That is not uncommon. You know, when you think back long ago, back before we had to worry about patch management, where remote control pretty much was just on the same, in the same building, things were easy then. And what happened over time is that as new pain points introduced themselves in IT, we all just scrambled and bought point solutions or tools to accomplish these different things, right? Patch and deployment and remote and software delivery and inventory. And what's happened over the past, let's say, 8, maybe 10 years, is several vendors, BMC included, said, well, why do we want to keep this stuff all separate? Why don't we pull all this into the same place? Let's create a solution that all uses the same technology for reporting, the same technology for replication, the same console, and let's tie that over into the service desk. If you remember me talking yesterday about the Gartner Magic Quadrants and how they used to have the two quadrants for lifecycle management and for IT service management, and that they've combined those into one, the reason BMC remains that top right vendor is because of what we've done by integrating service management and asset management together. If you've done any poking around BMC's website, you know that we have a portfolio, right, of different service management tools. We have pretty much integrated our asset piece across the board. So this is really the go-forward approach for BMC because, of course, now it does align with the newly formed IT service and support management quadrant with Gartner. So when we talk about our IT assets, it's funny, I can toss the term out, IT asset management, and I can toss that to 4 different customers, and I get 4 completely different responses. Some people think IT asset management only encompasses inventory. Some feel it's, oh no, it's barcode scanning and understanding just where my assets are sitting. Some people start talking about fixed assets and tables and chairs, and nobody really has a true understanding. Honestly, there really is no correct answer. But IT asset management to us, to BMC, is managing those IT endpoints, your desktops, your laptops, your servers, as well as gaining an understanding of everything else that you've got plugged into your network. And so what we're going to help you with then is the life cycle. Whoops, you know what's great is when I hide a slide and then I don't unhide it. Feels really professional here. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about the life cycle of our IT assets. And you can see that's really mapped out here on the right. Asset discovery, operating system deployment through deploying software. And then we come around into things like patch management and compliance, power management, understanding financial relationships, remote diagnostic and support, all the way at the end, which would be, of course, disposal. And so as you saw in that previous chiclet slide, BMC has put together a suite of modules or a suite of products to help us every step of the way here. Now, one of the really unique points here with the BMC, the Footprints Asset Core, is that it's truly modular. If you only are interested in inventory, that module can stand by itself. If you're only interested in remote control, that can also just stand by itself. Most of our competition force you to buy the entire suite. It's an all or none approach. And you know what? During a phase 1, if inventory is all I care about, that all or none approach can be very expensive, right? Especially if we've got modules that we're not using from day 1. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that, well, great, what if we start off with inventory and then down the road we'd love to add remote support or remote control to that? Also very easy. We take a different approach than our competitors in that area as well. The competitors of ours that do allow you to go down the module path, typically if you want to add functionality, you have to push out additional binaries to your machines and additional agents and services, and it really does feel like I just rolled out a whole other piece of software, even if it's the same tool. And what we've done here at BMC is that it's a single service that gets deployed to the machines in your environment. And day 1, regardless of which modules you purchase, That service that goes out to all those machines contains all of the functionality included with footprints. We simply turn it on and off via license key at the server. So that means if you start with inventory today, you reach out to us 3 months from now and say, wow, this is working great. We love compliance and remote. We sell you compliance and remote. You plug the license key in the server, and you now have compliance and remote. There's nothing else that you need to do. I just want to get that out there real quick so that we can understand how this product is sold. It is licensed a little bit differently than the service desk. Obviously, service desk, we talk about technicians or agents that are using the system. When we talk about licensing asset management from an IT perspective, this product is licensed per number of managed devices. And by managed device, I mean desktop, laptop, and possibly servers. Essentially, how many machines do we want to apply these management capabilities over? Okay. Yes, we're going to find every IP phone. Yes, we're going to find every network printer. I'm going to find you every Xbox 360 you've got plugged in, but there's no license cost associated with those. Only the assets that we want to do that enhanced management on.
I have a quick question.
Of course.
Well, where you said these were all modular and you would purchase them down the road, when you enable those, is there a second or third agent that needs to go out to all the endpoints, or is that all included on the first agent?
So that's a wonderful question, right? A lot of vendors in this space will tell you, hey, we're a single agent solution, to which I typically open up the services and say, no, you're not. You've got 20 services you're running on this box. That is anything but single agent, right? Footprints truly is a single service, and that single service contains all the functionality. So you're right. If you add functionality down the road, nothing else gets pushed down. No additional services get turned on or turned off. It is still being handled by that single service that you've already got out there.
Great, thanks.
All right, a little bit about architecture. You know, when we talked yesterday about service management and about the service desk, that is a single server solution. And remember, we said that server was real flexible, right? We could be virtual or physical, and there were different databases and platforms that we support. The same is going to hold true here with Asset Core, with one exception. You see, if we're talking just inventory management, you can get away with one central master server, and that master server is just as flexible as the Service Core master server was. But if we start talking about software deployments, and we start talking about pushing patches, we start talking about delivering operating systems to machines, I would imagine that your network people aren't going to be too thrilled if you have 100 or 5,000 machines come all back to that central point to kick off an installation, let's say a gigabyte in size for the latest Office, right? And
they get upset at that.
Say that one more time?
They get pretty upset about that.
They do get upset, right? What are you doing? There's a lot of finger pointing in IT. I've learned that over the years. So what we've done here in Footprints is we give you the ability to stand up something that we call a relay agent. You can have as many relays as you want. There is no license cost associated with a relay. And if you put multiple relays in a location, they will perform automatic fault tolerance and load balancing as well. These do not need to be dedicated pieces of equipment. Most of our customers, let's say that they've got another location downstream, they will simply leverage an existing server, put the service on that server. That server then functions as a relay. In fact, I've even got customers that have small enough locations, they may only have 10 computers in a location. They'll say, hey, we're going to make one of those 10 computers a relay, and the person's working in their Outlook all day. What they don't know is their machine's also delivering software to machines. Okay? So real flexible there from an implementation. These relays are bidirectional. What that means is, of course, I can, if I package up an application for deployment, that will replicate down to a relay, and then, of course, the clients will pull the source files from that relay. The clients are smart enough to know who's my nearest relay. You know, in this day and age when people pick up laptops and they go to other locations, I don't want to have them going across the wide area network to pull down an installation. Instead, I want them to find their nearest relay, and that's out-of-the-box functionality with Footprints here. These relays can also be responsible for sweeping your network and finding devices. I understand in this, lately we've got what? We've got VLANs, we've got firewalls, we've split our environment up into pieces. It's not like the old days. And so maybe that central master server doesn't have visibility across the entire environment, but if we strategically place a couple of these relays, then we might have maximum penetration. So the relays can sweep downstream and gather information, send that to the server. When inventory takes place, these machines will inventory themselves. They'll send that information to their nearest relay, and the relay sends that up. That really does minimize the amount of network impact when we lay a system like that, like this in your environment. Now this brings me to the next question for you, because most of our competition also struggles with this, and you're probably not doing much in this area. How do you support your laptops when people take them off the network?
Oh, we don't.
That's a perfectly acceptable answer. That's what most customers respond with. Once a device is off the network, it's really not our problem until it comes back and plugs in again.
Well, I didn't say that. It's still our problem. We just don't do it.
Okay, very, very true. And actually, you might have another remote tool. I talk to a lot of customers that say, well, we're not pushing software and we're not gathering inventory data, but if somebody is on a laptop and they're in the hotel room and they've got internet connectivity, we either make them VPN in so we can take remote control of their machine using our standardized tool, or we might have two tools. We might have something like TeamViewer or GoToAssist for those remote machines, whereas we might use Dameware or something like that for machines on the network. Is that kind of similar with what you guys are doing today?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
the trouble is when they're in the airport and we can't get them connected. You know.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, and especially some of those the things like TeamViewer and GoToAssist. Those are really expensive subscription services. Things get more complex when you say, oh, and by the way, we also have Macintoshes. Ugh. Now suddenly you've got 4 remote control tools that you're using to support your users. I'll argue that that's not the best approach. And so footprints, one of the things that we can do here is I could place one of these relays in the DMZ. I could do port forwarding from the outside to this particular relay, separate port forwarding from the relay to the master server. That gets me every single bit of our asset management capabilities with just one exception. We cannot do OS deployments over the internet. It's a terrible idea anyways.
It's a bad idea.
So let's shy away from that. But everything else, remote control, delivering patches, gathering inventory and compliance information, delivering software. We talked about how we could do that straight from the ticket yesterday. All those activities can be done over the internet, and all that traffic is encrypted, and it's all secure. And to do this, we have to open simply one network port from the outside in. It's completely configurable. Some of our competition, I was in a proof of concept a couple months ago against Altiris and against Landesk in this space. And when we got to the time where we had to talk about deployments over the internet, both of those companies required the customer to open 25 network ports through the firewall into the DMZ. That was not a popular answer. Especially when I was saying, hey, you know what, actually we only need one. Right? So real easy to set this up, and we maintain that level of security that you're going to want through your DMZ. Now, what happens if you don't want to set this up? If you say, well, my network guys are going to be too upset, this isn't going to happen. Well, you're right. You're not going to be taking remote control with our tool over the internet, but I will tell you from an inventory perspective, the machines inventory themselves. That's the default behavior. Even if they're offline, even if somebody's in their living room, on their couch, they have no internet connection whatsoever, if their machine is supposed to inventory itself every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m., it will do so. If it can't reach back to that master server or to a relay, the machine will simply cache that information locally. And if it's supposed to do so the next week and they're still offline, it will continue to build that cache out. And then when somebody connects over VPN or they bring that machine back to the company network, at that point in time, all of that information will be uploaded to the server. So you're not going to miss out on historical information and trends just because people are offline. Now, I would argue that it's better to do it this way that we're showing on the slide here. Let's just let this stuff happen over the internet. But again, if that's going to be too big of a challenge for you, we're still going to preserve that information. Okay?
Good. Yeah, like it.
Well, great. So now we've got architecture out of the way. Let's dive right into the product itself. What's the first step around IT asset management, and that is inventory? Because how can I manage my IT assets if I don't know what I have? So that's certainly the starting point, right? Let's just have a couple talking points here on the right, and then we're going to dive right on over to the software itself. First and foremost, we provide you multi-OS support. This is not a Windows-only solution. I can manage my Windows machines, my Mac OS devices, and if you got Linux kicking around, we can manage that as well. Okay? From a discovery perspective, we actually have 3 different methods of discovering IT assets, and they can all live together in the same system. The first is a truly agentless discovery with no credentials whatsoever. Now, obviously, that's going to get the least amount of information, right? We're going to find, hey, here's the name of the device, and here's its IP address, and MAC address, and manufacturer, here's the operating system, and that's about all we're going to get. So why is that useful? Well, I still might want to have a scan like that happen once a week. I might even want to have that happen once a day, right? Because I want to get notified when somebody does plug in that Nintendo Wii, so we can maybe take some precautionary methods to eliminate that device from the network. But I certainly wouldn't rely on that method to get me anything beyond just the basic information. Now, the second method would be agentless discovery again, but with credentials. Remember, I used to be a server guy, right? And I was that server guy, the guy that said, hey, look, you're not putting an agent on my servers. That was that whole political game we all used to play, and maybe we still do. Oh, by the way, though, I still do want inventory data. I can't have it both ways, right? So what we've done is we've given customers the ability to do an agentless scan, and if you give us credentials to authenticate against a device, we can then leverage WMI and other protocols to gather hardware and software information about an IT asset. It's still not going to be as granular and as deep as we're going to be able to get by putting an agent on the device, but it's better than zero, right? And why is that? Because when you're agentless, you're asking the operating system, so what do you have? Now, what happens if I have an incorrect driver installed and I'm the operating system? I'm going to say, I've got this ATI graphics card. Okay, well, maybe I don't, but that's what I think I have, and it's miraculous that it's working at all. I'm not going to get the best data. You put an agent on the machine, then what? I'm leaving the operating system out of the equation. I'm asking the hardware itself, what are you? Does that make sense to everybody as to why we might want to go down that path?
Yep.
I'll give you another example. If we want to start looking at software license management and understanding how often people are using applications so we can make better choices around acquiring software, if you go agentless, you ask the operating system. When was the last time any of you were in the control panel to see how often someone uses an application? It's my favorite verbiage ever. So if I say, well, how often does Mark Jarvis use Microsoft Word? Microsoft says he uses it rarely. Ugh, what does that mean? Does rarely mean once a week? Does rarely mean once a month? I don't know. And so if I have an agent on the machine, I'm going to get much better usage data as well. Again, leading me to make better decisions. Now, there are a couple other things that come along with the inventory management. For one, application management. I can not only monitor the usage of applications, I can do application blacklisting. Right? I can't prevent somebody from installing something because that's the way Windows works, but I sure can prevent them from launching it. Yeah. We're going to get some license management capabilities we're going to show you coming up here. Of course, you're going to get comprehensive reports. There are tons of pre-built reports, and you can create your own. We're going to step through that. And finally, that service anywhere technology. There's one other bullet point I should have put on here, which was that tight integration with the service core, with what you saw yesterday. Remember when we created a ticket, we saw right in line with that ticket. Hey, here's the computer that person's sitting at, and here's the information about that computer. So that tight integration is included as well. So with that, I'm going to hop on over here. I have 2 virtual machines running. On this first virtual machine, I am logged in as a desktop technician, a desktop engineer, whatever you'd like to call me. I'm the person that's going to be interfacing with the product. Just like yesterday, I also have administrative rights in the system, and that way we can peel back the layers a little bit and you can see some of the administration. I have one more machine here. This is a regular end user logged into their machine. This user does not have local administrative rights on their machine. It is a locked down traditional end user. Here we're going to be able to interact and understand what happens between the two. Okay? And I'll let you know when we're switching hats here. How's that sound?
Okay, sounds good.
So I've already got the console launched here. Let's take a look at this console. First and foremost, get ready for this. The console is a Java applet. Okay, I know Java is not everybody's most popular piece of software. However, this means that if I'm sitting at a Mac, if I'm sitting on a Linux device, if I'm sitting at a Windows machine, I can access the console. It means that if I'm out on the floor troubleshooting something, I don't have to go running back to my desk, which is a 32-bit version of Windows that has the console software installed on it so I can do something. Because all I have to do is point to a URL, this Java applet will fire up, and I can take care of it right then and there. Okay? There is no requirement for Java anywhere else in the environment. None of our agents require Java at all. It's just wherever I'm going to launch this console from, we do need to have the Java runtime installed. And yes, we support multiple versions back, so you don't have to play that stupid Java game that we all play.
Good.
Okay? Now, when we get into the console, the second question typically is, well, what's the security like? And it's very similar to what we talked about yesterday with the service desk. So I can do pass-through authentication. That's against web server authentication. That can be Active Directory. That can be LDAP. I can also do internal authentication. To be honest, most of my customers leave this with internal authentication because they want a technician to key in an account and password to gain access. Trust me, and those of you that use the now Dell tool that you've got, you know that those tools are really popular, and it's really easy to break 1,000 machines in like 5 minutes if you don't know what you're doing.
Or less, yeah.
Or less, of course. So absolutely. So a lot of my customers say, hey, that's great that you got pass-through authentication. I'm forcing my technicians to still key that information in. That's up to you. Now, once we're in the console, what do we have here? Well, I've got some graphs up at the top. So if I want to look at device types, I can expand that out and drill down through that. I'd like to draw your attention down to this box here. You see, this product has been designed with workflow in mind. And by workflow, I mean, you know, you're not using this 40 hours a week, are you? You might come in here and package an application, and then the next time you do that, it's 4 weeks from now. And what we don't want to have happen is you come back 4 weeks from now and spend the first hour scratching your head, poring over a help file, saying, how the heck did I do that? And so the product leans very heavily on wizards. You can see we have a whole toolbox of wizards available here. I've got a whole drop-down with wizards. I can right-click on any one of these and report creation wizard and query creation wizard. They are everywhere. But that really does simplify the learning curve for your existing technicians as well as your new technicians. Now you can see on the left, I have the entire product suite installed, so I've got everything. Package management, OS deployment, patch, compliance. If I didn't have, let's say, patch, that line just simply wouldn't be here, right? It would be hidden. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier as well, if I plug that license key in, that becomes available to me. Okay?
Question.
Of course.
This is, presumably it's all configurable, so we have a technician that is just going to manage the packages, that's what they'll see?
I think you know my demo better than I do, because the next thing I was just about to show you here
right. I should let you go.
The actual Granule Security, because this is important, right? When we give people access to this, we need to be very role-based with how that's done.
Okay, good.
So we can see here I can define my administrators, but I can also define administrative groups. So we can see here, what am I giving my help desk administrators? I can add my help desk administrators here, and then I can define their security profile. So a help desk administrator can view devices and device groups. They can take remote control of devices. That's it. Now, if I want to take that a step further, you can see at the top over static objects and dynamic objects. So if we could pretend that David, he supports finance. So I could very easily come in here and say, all right, David has inventory capabilities and remote control capabilities over just the finance people and or PCs. It sounds to me like that's what you're looking for.
Perfect. That's
great. Yeah, so I can really slice and dice this from a security perspective any which way I want. Okay.
Like it.
And while we're in here, the global settings, here's where I can take a look at things like connected consoles, control my agent rollouts, my replication windows are here, certain defaults around financial asset management. This is all the configuration of the tool is available in this view. Now, that view itself, the global settings, yeah, that wouldn't be visible to your regular technician. I would hide that, right? That's only going to be for your administrators of the tool. So that still adheres to those roles. So where do we start? We're talking about inventory. Most customers right off the bat will do an agentless sweep of their environment just to get that baseline, understand what they've got. How easy is that to accomplish? It's our first wizard, so let's step through that. I'm going to make this configurable because I don't know about you, but automatic sounds too easy. I'm going to step here. Now, I can initiate the scan from the master server or from a downstream scanner, because you can see if I move this out of the way that I actually have multiple scanners set up, scanning multiple pieces of the environment. So real granular there. I can use an existing scan, but no, let's create a new one. If I know that I've got no Unix, Linux, or Mac OS devices, I could uncheck that. So you can see I can influence what we're scanning for. These bottom two are kind of cool because we're able to scan for virtual guests and hosts, and we build those relationships for you, so I understand what virtual machines are on what physical machine. I can also see target lists. Let's go ahead and create one of these. By default, the scanner is going to scan its own subnet. You can uncheck that if you'd like, but we're going to leave that in place. And then are we just going to do this immediately or schedule this to happen on a recurring basis? So I'm happy with that. I can save the scan and the configuration. That way I can reuse them in the future. And then remember I said there's three types of scans. So when we're talking agentless here, I've got no credentials listed out on any of these, right? So that's that without credentials. If I want to add credentials, I can do that here. Rest assured, these are stored encrypted. They're past encrypted as well. So if you haven't standardized on a single account, but you've got 3 or 4 accounts, I would plug those in here. That way the agentless sweep will say, hey, well, this first account didn't work. Now I'm trying the second one. Okay, I'm now in the device of the second account, so I can query it for information. Remember, we're still talking just purely agentless for a scan. Now, another thing I can plug in here, too, what about community strings? You probably have more than one of those. You might have some SNMP-v3 devices that need authentication, so I can lay out my SNMP strings here as well. Why do we want to do that? I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, because what we get there is pretty cool. Once I'm happy, then my target list, what am I scanning? We can see that right now the scanner is scanning its own subnet, excluding itself. I can add to this list. So maybe I want to import a list of machines, browse the network, do an auto-discover. Maybe I just want to do a range. And this is going to validate that range. So let's say, notice it's red again. It's going to stay red until that's a valid range. So there we go. Now I'm also going to scan that range. Now if you've got a huge list of IP ranges, just import those in with that CSV list. That'll make that a lot easier for you. Here comes the train. I can hear it. Alrighty. So now we've got the target list. What's next? Well, this is our scheduling dialog. This is across the board. We use this dialog box for report creation. We use this for deployments. We're giving a lot more granularity than just daily, weekly, monthly. So I'm going to say let's execute this immediately. We're going to run forever. And then what? Do I want to go on the 2nd and 4th and 6th day of the month? Do I want to go certain days of the week? You can see we can get real focused here. Only once at a certain time on, let's say, the 2nd day of the month. And I could shift select if I wanted to choose just different dates. Now, I'm not going to hit finish here because I've already got this scan set up, and you can see that's up above. What happens once these scanners start scanning out there? Well, we start feeding back with discovered devices. Right off the bat with these icons, I can gain a lot of information. I can tell, is it a virtual machine or physical? Is it managed or not managed? What operating system is on it? You might need to get real close to the monitor to see that. But here's a little Windows logo and a Linux logo, and I got a little Mac logo down here. Okay. And what have I found? I found, well, here's the device name, the IP address. It's unmanaged, which means there's no agent on it. In this case, this one's a server. I should have a printer down here. Here's the operating system. That's about all we're capturing without credentials.
Okay.
Now, the ultimate goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to get the agent deployed. How do I do that? We give you about 9 different ways to deploy the agent. So I could certainly shift select here and push that out to a bunch of devices. I could one-off push to a device. I can step through a wizard up here, controlling agent rollout. You can use your existing scripting tool, group policy, login script, email attachment, post a link on a website. I think you get the idea. We give you lots of ways to get that agent deployed. Okay? And agent deployment is just as granular as everything else in the tool. So let's step real quick through an agent rollout wizard. I am not going to select all these. We'd be here for an hour just talking about that. But here we're going to install the agent. I can name the rollout, name the executable if I want. I can say, well, we're going to actually push this out to OS X if we want. No, actually, let's just choose Windows. I can rename the service, control the service startup type. I can control what ports we're talking to. Are we going to statically select the relay or automatically select it? What about TCP timeouts and frame sizes? So if I have different regional offices that have different network configs, I can define a different rollout for each of those so that they're playing nicely on your network. Okay. What about the icon in the system tray? Do I want that to be hidden, static, dynamic? Dynamic is what I like because then the users know, hey, something's being installed on my machine, or hey, somebody's remote controlling my machine, and it's not a mystery, right? Reboot control, and you can see I just chose 3 of those checkboxes, so we could go through all of those and very nicely configure the agent for rollout. So now we're pushing that agent out. What do we get back? We get back some pretty cool information. I could do this all day. This is pretty fun, right? So this is showing me, first and foremost, my asset core topology. Think about that slide I showed you earlier. I've got these machines here communicating to this, right, relay. The relay talks to the master server. These machines talking direct to the master. Here's another group of machines that talk to another relay. So this gives me a nice picture of what does my asset core footprints infrastructure look like. Okay? This is also not just a pretty picture. I could right-click, take remote control of a device, directly access the device. I can do different activities right from this view. Now that's the first view. Let's take a look at our network topology. All right. How about we go into our 10.5? How about 10.5.93? Those are all the devices on that subnet. And again, I could interact with these. Okay. Here next is where those community strings are important. We can see I've got 2 switches in my demo environment. I can drill out and see what devices are connected to that switch. In fact, let's drill into that switch itself. Here I'm looking at, it's a 3-com super stack. There's the device. That was that overview information. I've got financial asset information. You can import this, stick with the defaults, or even key this in. So when did we purchase it? We're doing straight line depreciation over what type of time frame. So now I can see there's only 3 months left in service date on this switch. If it starts giving us fits, that's probably close enough for us to replace it, right? If we look at inventory, connectivity, physical, I can tell you what device is plugged into which port on this switch. Okay? For the technical in the room, all we are doing here is pulling the MAC address table from the switch and correlating that with the devices that we're finding in the environment. But this can be a huge time saver for you. Okay?
It's really hard to script.
So let's take a look at, that's on a switch. Let's actually take a look at an individual computer. I could search up top for that. I could drill on through. I'm going to just view here, right-click. Let's view the node. Now, remember, I have all the modules installed, so I have quite a bit here in this dropout under this device. I'm going to focus on inventory right now. So right from this view, I get an inventory overview. I can immediately, up in the corner, re-audit this machine. Okay? I've got a quick overview of hardware information. This is not everything we're capturing, but this is just a snapshot of, okay, the monitor resolution, and what else do we have here? What's the software on this device? Notice here, what's the software? What web browsers are on the machine? What's in the MSI database? What applications did we find on the hard drive? What did we find in the add remove programs? And what's the combined view of all of that? Okay.
I have a question. Is that a separate module, or is that part of the asset inventory?
We are all still in asset inventory.
Wow. Okay.
I will announce when we are marching into the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're capturing all this. Security, look at this. I can actually tell you, okay, Microsoft Security Center Essentials is the antivirus. It's enabled, and the DAT file's up to date. The firewall's enabled on all 3 ports, and it's the Windows firewall, and here's what shares exist on that device. So we're doing a security inventory. And if we pull in Compliance Manager, which is another module, I can define different compliance rules in my environment, and then see not only enterprise-wide, but also just even on a device-by-device basis, is this device compliant? Let me give you an example. Maybe in our environment we say, to be compliant from a web browser perspective, you've got to have one of these 3 web browsers. They've got to be this version or newer. That's a compliance rule. So I can run reports against that for my machines that aren't compliant. Now that's just the overview. Let's do a deep dive here. Notice along the left all the different types of inventories that we performed. Connectivity we already looked at. I can do custom inventory. So in here I'm pulling some information from SAP as well as some information from the registry on that machine. Here's hardware information. Before I go any further and dive into any of these, you notice here, hardware history. Show me what hardware elements have been added or removed from this device during the last week. Let's do that. Whoop, there we go. Okay, good. Nothing was deleted. You know how useful that is for a service desk technician?
Incredible.
Or a server guy, right? When you're going, I don't know. Oh, a patch was installed on Thursday. So we are preserving that historical data. In fact, the default behavior for these machines performing inventory is that they will, a machine inventories itself, it compares that to the last inventory that was run and only transmits to the server what's changed. So we are only talking about a few bytes of information every time an inventory is run. Your network guys will be happy about that. Okay, well, let's do a deep dive here. What about BIOS information? Boom, I've got all the BIOS data, information about the system, information about the monitor. What about the network adapter and the physical memory? How fast is the memory in slot 2 if I want to know that? The video controller. You get the idea here. We're capturing a lot of information, and that's just hardware. What else are we looking at? Well, if we've got the patch management piece, I can tell you in 2 clicks here, these are the patches that are missing. If I want to do an ad hoc, put on the fire hat, fix an issue, I can right-click and fix this right from here. In fact, I can remotely scan this device for vulnerabilities as well. We're going to talk more about patch in a little bit because, of course, you're going to take a more holistic approach. But I have that available here. What service packs are missing? What patches are installed? What service packs are installed? And, yes, I'm going to get that patch history as well so I can see what's changed from a patch perspective over time.
Wow.
That piece does require the patch management module to see that. Okay? I can get you a power management inventory. So what policies are in place? What capabilities does this device have around power management? What power plans are in place on this device? More on this later because we can also deploy and manage these from the central console. We talked already about security. Let's look at software. We already saw the scanned applications with that drop-down. One added benefit here, or 2 added benefits. One, same thing, software history. Show me what software was installed during the last month, and I would see that. I haven't really changed anything in my environment, so it looks a little bare here. I can also show you what license units are being consumed by this IT asset. Ooh, more on license management in a little bit as well. Okay. But does that give you an idea just in terms of how much data we're capturing on these devices? And any questions? Any questions about the information we're gathering?
No. Seems
okay.
Incredibly complete.
Absolutely. And I would say that looking at this on a one-off device, that's useful with troubleshooting. But of course, you're going to want to also view this sliced and diced different ways, aren't you? Show me all of my Windows XP machines. Show me all of my marketing computers. Show me all the devices that have Adobe 9 or older. Right? There's lots of different ways we want to interpret this information. And the way that we accomplish that in Footprints is using groups. You can see here I have both device groups and user groups. We can import device groups from AD if you've done a nice job of managing them there. A lot of customers haven't. And these groups can be dynamic or static. The static group is pretty easy to understand, right? It's, hey, classroom PCs. I've got 10 machines, assign them to that group, I'm done. Now I've got that particular group. But they can also be dynamic, and that's where this product gets pretty fun, at least for me, and hopefully you too. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm still here. It's David. I'm still here.
That might have been Mark that dropped. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure everybody's still here that needs to be here.
We're here.
Don't worry. Don't need to worry about.
So what will we use a dynamic group for? Think about my example before, right? All machines that have Adobe 9 or older. I could create a dynamically populated group. And by dynamically populated, I mean, well, tomorrow if you build a machine and put an old version of Adobe on it, that machine automatically adds itself to the group. Well, that could be useful for reporting purposes, but you know what? We can use these groups to target software deployments as well. So I'd like to introduce you to a concept that I call desired state management. We could also call it policy-based management if you'd like. But essentially, I can define different policies or desired states for assets in my environment and let the system work it out automatically. Anytime somebody installs an old version of Adobe Reader on a machine, that machine is automatically added to the group. Asset Core comes in and says, oh, I got to deploy the new version of Adobe Reader and remove the old version. It does that automatically. It moves that device out of the group. You still get a full audit trail of everything that just happened there, but you don't have to touch a thing. You let the system manage itself. Okay?
Amazing.
That should free up your desktop engineering team to do things more fun than constantly run around with CDs or constantly run around creating scripts to fix things. Maybe their golf handicaps are going to get better. I don't know. I'm just saying. Now, these groups can also be nested. If we take a look here, I've created one called Additional Device Groups. Under here, I've got by OS type. And you can see this OS type container has multiple dynamically populated device groups underneath. Why is that useful? For one, there's all my Windows XP devices. Here's my Windows 7 devices. I got a Mac over here, some Linux devices here. So it gives me a different perspective or visual into my environment. But I also get roll-up data. So let's take a look at those Windows XP devices. Here they are. If I expand this out, notice I want roll-up financial information. Now, I haven't plugged in absolutely everything here, but notice I've got some on order, some are deployed, some are retired. Let's look at roll-up inventory data on this group. I'm after hardware, BIOS, by manufacturer. Let's look at that as a chart. Well, that was pretty quick to get to. I mean, I didn't have to write a query or create a report or anything. Maybe I want to see that as a bar chart. There we go. Maybe I'm terrified that we still have a compact device in our environment. I could double-click any of these. Whoop, let me do that one more time. Double-click. There we go. I'm taken straight to that particular asset. So I might want to find this asset and retire it because it's ancient. Right? So does that seem pretty useful, pretty easy to get to that type of information?
Yes.
To create one of these groups is also very easy. It starts off down here with my queries. We do give you quite a few queries out of the box. I'm going to create one myself. Let's call this, how about that? Now, if you're a SQL person, go ahead and do free query, and you can type the query out yourself. I'm no longer a SQL person, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. And so now we've got this query here. I can step through criteria, and I can add criteria to this query. So let's make this the easiest. We said it was Napa Windows PCs. Let's go operating system name contains, whoop, my mouse is, there we go, contains Win, there we go. Okay. I can activate this query. I can preview it. This grabs the first 100 or so records so that we know this is exactly what I'm looking for. Now that I've got this query, what can I do with it? Well, I can create reports based on that query. Obviously, this was a pretty easy query. We only had one criteria. But I could also right-click, create a dynamically populated device group based on that query. Now, I'm going to add a word here for you. I'm going to say only include the devices that have an agent installed. So now when I scroll back up to my groups, we'll do a refresh. Here it is. Now I've got that subset. This is now, to quote the great Ron Popeil, set it and forget it, right? If you build a new Windows machine tomorrow, you put the agent on that machine will automatically add itself to this group for management purposes. So can we see where groups can be real powerful for you?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, since we were talking about that query, let's keep going down that path. I said we could create a report based on that, so let's quickly look at reporting here. This is all still inventory management, by the way. We haven't stepped into anything else. Here's another wizard. So we're going to step through this wizard. How about we go Windows PCs. Now I can have this style or template based, and there's plenty of pre-built styles available for you. I'm going to crank the font size up. I'm going to add our logo. Yes, you can upload your own logo. It's very easy to do that. All right. It's going to be a device query. And let's go for that query that we just created. Here was that Windows PCs. And I can choose what type of report I'm going to create. Let's just stick with a simple table. Now, what data do I want to add here? So I'm interested, let's say, in the device name. That's going to be none there. Let's go ascending. And then why don't we also add operating system name, operating system revision. My mouse is double-clicking when it's not supposed to. Here we go. Let's come down into hardware inventory. How about we go with BIOS release date? We'll add that. Maybe we'll add a computer system. How about manufacturer there as well? Okay, I'm happy with that list. While I'm building these reports, I can preview them. So this is going to pull up a browser. I can get an idea of, is this what I'm looking for? That looks pretty good to me. Okay. Let's step forward here. Now, what do we want to do with this report? You know, I can actually say, save this report as an HTML, and notice I can FTP it somewhere, I can HTTP it somewhere, or drop it on a file share. So if you want this report to run every Friday at 9 a.m. and update SharePoint, it can do that for you.
Wow. Nice.
If, however, you want this to be automatically delivered to your email inbox, I can also have it send those emails. So once we've got those set up, I say, well, I've got this report created. I want that report over my, in this case, my managed PCs. I can do a full report preview. Now we've got our logo there. Now we've got our colors. Everything looks great. Here we go. Let's run this immediately. This is going to be that same dialogue we saw before. Run this forever, and I want this to run on every Friday. Right. I want it to happen once every Friday at 7 a.m., and that will then run and automatically deliver the report every Friday at 7 a.m. to whichever recipients you chose.
Nice.
So yes, you don't need Crystal reports. You don't need SQL reporting services. All the report creation and delivery is available here out of the box. Also out of the box, depending upon which modules you end up purchasing, you get a ton of pre-built reports. So notice reports on application usage, reports around compliance, financial reports, reports on your patch management, your power management reports, which you can use to deliver to your power company for a rebate I'm going to tell you about, reports around virtualization and vulnerabilities. So if I wanted to, I could certainly start with one of these reports and copy it and then change it if I wanted to. Any questions on reporting?
No, I might be going off topic here a bit, and you can tell me to wait till later, what have you. Say we have a PC, it comes in, and we assign it to John Doe. Does the agent pick up the user's name once they log in? Or if we were, as in, we were looking at what PCs or assets are assigned to users?
Okay, so absolutely. If I go back, let's go back here. Let's take a look at this machine again. All right. There's the user right there we picked up.
Gotcha.
So that's the user that used it last.
No, notice here it says it's the primary user. So what we're doing is we're looking over time at who logs in the most in that machine and determining that's the primary user. We will still maintain the full audit trail of everybody who's logged into this machine, but we won't designate them as primary unless they're the one that's done it the most.
That is fantastic.
I think that's a good idea.
Because you want both, right? You want information about both. Now, I've had some customers that say, I don't even want that. I tuck that in a registry key somewhere, that they're the owner of it, or maybe they manage that in the CMDB. That's up to you. But yes, Asset Core can absolutely track that for you.
So do we assign it to them?
No, well, like you said, we can set a registry key and track that key if we want to assign it to a particular person.
Right.
I really like the primary user.
Yeah, no,
I think the primary really is the best of both.
They're the owner.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Well, there's a couple other topics to talk about around inventory management, and those really revolve around the application management. I know. Don't let the wording throw you. This is still all part of inventory. So I can set up different ways of managing apps. So I'm going to say configure a list of apps to manage here. You can check out 3 types of application management capabilities. The first is to protect an application. That is for your old legacy EXE-based apps. We're pre-MSI. What I could do is grab a snapshot of the file system and of a chunk of the registry, and that way if a user breaks an app, we can make an attempt to fix it. If they're newer MSI-based apps, that's not necessary anymore. I can set up a monitor. A monitor is going to track usage of applications. We take the absolute opposite approach of all of our competition when it comes to application usage monitoring, okay? Most vendors, what they'll do is out of the box, they will track everything. Honestly, I could care less how often Dave McMillan launches Windows Paint, right? And so what I don't want to have is information overload coming in from all these apps. I'm generating that much more network traffic to understand usage around apps I could care less about, right? So here we can actually set up, well, what apps do we want to monitor for usage? I would say go after your expensive applications. I would also probably take a look at maybe the top 10 vendors that are the most audit-happy vendors out there today and monitor those applications for usage. The last is prohibiting an application. Now remember, if a user is a local admin on a machine, we can't prevent them from installing something. It's just the way Windows works. But I sure as heck can prevent them from launching it. Okay? So how does that work here? Well, on my end user's machine, I've prevented this end user from launching Windows Media Player. It was already there. In fact, when they launch it, it'll pop up here, and they can actually start it. Usually it might take, I've seen this take a half a second. I've seen it take a second and a half. Boom. The asset core just killed that application. The branding, put your own logo there so people aren't freaked out thinking it's some sort of malware. I would go for nicer verbiage than I threw in here. The shame on you for launching that application might be a little strong. Okay? Now, something cool here, though, is that we logged that on the back end. I can run a report to see how often people are launching unauthorized applications. Maybe I send that to their manager. I could have that trigger maybe sending an email to HR. That's up to you. Okay? We also have software license management here. Are you guys starting to talk about software license management at all? That's something that...
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I had a customer not too long ago that didn't have a license management tool in place, and they got audited by Microsoft. I won't mention what customer it was, but in the end, they had to write a $1.3 million check to Microsoft. And in talking to that gentleman, he said, you know, Jeff, he said, I don't know what was more painful, writing that check to Microsoft or the fact that it took 20 people 2 months of digging through access tables, Excel spreadsheets, file cabinets, Post-it notes to then have to write that $1.3 million check, right? And so really what license management struggles to do, or not struggles, it strives to do here for you is what? Well, we're giving you a centralized place, directly connected to your inventory, because it has to be. Your environment's not static. People are always uninstalling and installing software, so we need something that's looking at the most up-to-date real-time information. We start off on a dashboard. You can see how many licenses of this particular application have I purchased, how many devices have I authorized to use that purchased license. What does that mean? You know, maybe I buy 10 licenses of QuickBooks for my accounting department, but there's 20 people in accounting. So if I find QuickBooks on any of those 20 machines, at least I know that it's on an authorized device. Now, we still might be out of license compliant if ultimately it finds its way on all 20, but at least it's on those authorized devices. If I find it on a machine in marketing, we've got issues, because now somebody has shared that license outside of the business unit that purchased the application. I can tell you how many copies are installed. Here we can see I've exceeded by 1. If I had usage data, which I don't in my little demo environment here, I would see that. And all this, of course, is drilled through as well. So if I want to see, well, what devices are authorized to use this app, a simple double click is going to take me to that device list. Now from here, I can store attachments, getting rid of the whole file cabinet mentality, right? If I want to scan the license agreement and the user guide and a copy of the invoice, if I want to store my licenses here, I can manually add those. I can import those as well. And you can see we do support pretty much all major license types. But that's the ultimate goal here, is to give me this visibility. So when I do go through an audit, heaven forbid, we're just sitting down with the auditor at this console parsing through it, as opposed to running around digging for that information elsewhere. That wraps up Inventory Manager. It's a whole lot of functionality for just that one module. Are there any questions before we move on?
Well, that beats the filing cabinet.
I'm sorry, you cut out there, or maybe my phone cut out. One more time?
I was just saying that it beats our filing cabinet.
Ah, got it. All right, well, we're going to take a brief second and talk about Compliance Manager, because Compliance Manager, in my opinion, should always go along with the Inventory Manager. Compliance actually includes multiple modules that used to stand on their own, but we bundled them all together into Compliance. Those modules would be the Software Catalog, the Compliance Manager itself, Device Manager, and Power Manager. So the first, the Software Catalog. This is probably, in my opinion, the reason to purchase this module. You see, let's go back to our application monitoring for a second. Let's go through this wizard. If I'm going to say, let's blacklist an application from here, if I don't have the Software Catalog, I only have scanned applications, which means when I add an application, I am now looking at this. Well, look at all these Internet Explorers. I can't shift select. Well, I guess I can shift selectors, but you can see I'm treating these all separately. Adobe's notorious for this, right? Adobe 9.1 and 9.12 and 9.15 and 9.17 and It's because we don't have a normalization engine in the middle without the Software Catalog. Software Catalog brings that normalization, it brings categorization, it also brings suite awareness. What that means, say you have Office Standard on a machine. You go back later on, you add Access and a couple other components. In Microsoft's eyes, that is now Office Professional. Without Software Catalog, we wouldn't know that. With the Software Catalog, it understands what components make up those different suite levels, so we would make that change. That's going to make your audit a whole lot nicer, right? It also, like I said, gives us categorization. So if I come back through here and say, let's use the Software Catalog instead, now it's a completely different dialogue. Let me expand this out for you. So maybe I want to go by category. Show me help desk software. Show me human resources software. Let's go by manufacturer. Let's go Microsoft. Oops. There we go. You can see it's a pretty big list. I think there's something like 17,000 titles in our Software Catalog. If I go after Microsoft and we take a look at .NET, now I get a roll-up. Do I want all .NETs or do I want some of these sub-releases underneath? So that's really the first piece of the Compliance Manager. I think that's really important. It's going to make things like report creation a lot easier for you when you're creating software reports. The second piece is the Power Management. I'm not going to show you anything around Power Manager. You already saw that we've got quite a few pre-built reports around Power. You saw that we could take inventory of a machine and understand what it's capable of from a Power perspective. But I could also manage and centrally deploy Power policies. Why is that important? Well, let me give you an example. I've got a few customers in Southern California. I can tell you that just about every state offers this. If you can prove to your Power company that you are managing your devices from a Power perspective, here's a couple reports that they ask for, which, yes, we've pre-built those reports for you. When you submit those to the Power company, you get a one-time per PC rebate. Now, if you've not already cashed in on that rebate, I have seen that rebate as high as $20 per computer. If you got 1,000 computers, now we're talking some serious cash, right? What makes that even sweeter is the fact that the entire Compliance Manager module list price is $10 per computer. So you're going to get the Software Catalog and the Power Management and the Device Management and then the Compliance and $10 back per PC in your pocket, depending, again, on your location. If you guys want more information around Power Management and what we can do for you, just reach out to Mark. He's got information about that.
Okay.
The next is Device Management. Do you guys have a system in place to prevent people from writing, let's say, to thumb drives?
Well, we have a policy, yes.
So is it a verbal policy, or it's something that's preventing people from doing it technically?
No, technically.
Okay. Oh, so you're using a policy in AD to do that. Okay. So we've done something similar. It's much more granular because obviously my executives might have different requirements than my end users, and it's more than just preventing writing to thumb drives. Maybe I want to prevent webcams, but I want to allow printers. And so device management is just that. You can see if I come back up here to my operational rules, which we're going to talk more about here shortly. I'm just going to create one real quick for you. How about we just go, there we go. Notice here too, available and integrated solutions. If I select that, that's going to be available in the service desk for my technicians to push straight from the ticket. That's how easy that is. But here, device management. You can see the different things we can do. Very simply, I'm going to disable the Windows burning service. Done. Okay? I'm going to disable USB storage write access. Done. I could push that out now to all my machines or to a subset of those machines using those groupings. If I wanted to get more granular than that, I could come through here and say, well, USB modems are authorized, and let's say USB scanners are not, so we'll leave that unchecked. And so I can build out what do I want allowed from a peripheral standpoint. Now what's cool from here is, of course, you're going to have an end user call the service desk and say, hey, I'm actually working on a project and I do need to write something to a thumb drive. And so what I typically do is create a very simple 3-line project here, and what that will do is it will, 1, enable their thumb drive write access, start a timer for 2 hours or 24 hours or whatever you decide, and then when that timer expires, redisable their write access again. Because if you don't do that last part, it's only a matter of months before everybody has access again, because none of us are going to remember to do that.
Agreed.
The final piece of compliance is just that. It's just the compliance. If we take a look, let me step here. We can create compliance dashboards. So if I want a PCI dashboard, and again, I don't have a ton of data here, some new dashboards, I can add elements. Let me show you what a compliance rule is, because it's very similar to setting up one of those queries we already showed you. If we take a look here at system configuration, here we go. I have what? I've got no instant messaging applications installed. You can see on the right my criteria. If I find any of these instant message applications or any application that the software catalog deems as an instant messaging application, that device is not compliant. So what? I can run a report on that. I can look at it from a dashboard view. But you can see here on the left as well, I can create a dynamically populated device group with machines that are not compliant. And so think about what happens if I then put a package together that uninstalls Skype. So somebody has Skype installed, they're not compliant, we're going to uninstall Skype, throw a dialog box up to them to say shame on you for installing that application, and then they're compliant again, all while preserving that audit trail. It goes back to that policy-based management again. With that, we are going to step into the next module. This is a real short one, remote support. It sounds like you guys have a couple different tools you use to provide remote control or remote assistance to your users, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this is going to give you really the ability to standardize on just one tool. Why is that? Well, our remote manager works on Windows machines as well as Macintoshes. It works on machines on the network and off the network. All the information is secure and encrypted. We get some direct access tools so we can do things behind the scenes, and we get that service anywhere, the on and off network. And oh, by the way, we can also initiate that right from the ticket. You saw that yesterday in that drop-down where I could take remote control of the user's machine straight from the ticket itself. So what's this look like? I got different ways of getting there. I could, again, search for that device. Maybe I'm going to just step right on down to that device again. I could right-click, remote, but let's view the node one more time so I can show you these two options. The first is direct access. This would be I want to do certain things to the user's machine without them knowing that I'm doing those things. Okay? And if I expand this out, you're going to notice, let's look at the file system. I am now browsing the file system of that other machine, right? I'm digging right on through there. In fact, if I want to create a directory, I can do that here. I've now created a directory. That works over the internet, by the way, right? Without anybody VPNing in. So I can interact with the user's machine. That's a lot easier than, hold on, I'm gonna map a drive over to your computer. Oh, it's not that one. Which one is it? I can also do that directly from a ticket. Okay? If I wanted to transfer files, could do that from this view as well. That's the first. What about registry? HKey local machines, software. Let's go to Microsoft. If I want to add a key, modify a key, I can do that as well. That's a lot easier than firing up Regedit and then connecting to a remote device and, oh, you're not on the network, I need you to VPN in, so I can do that all straight from here. This also means that your technicians are no longer going to be wearing off the Alt and Tab text on their keyboard, because notice I'm doing this all within one tool. I don't have 5 things open to support my users down below. I could look at what services are on this machine. This will take a second to query that, and yes, I could start, stop, restart, change the startup type, so interact with those services. I can look at processes on the device. Great for the service desk. My machine's running slow. Well, let's sort and see what's chewing up all the CPU. I can end a process. I can also start a new one. Yes, this works over the internet. This is the theme you're getting from me here. Let's start everybody's favorite. There we go. And that just started. If I head over to the other machine, we now see Notepad is running where it wasn't before. I can also parse right through the event logs, all from here. Okay. Now maybe that doesn't help me. I need to look over the user's shoulder, in which case I can initiate remote control. By default, remote control pops up in another window. We can see I have hot window borders turned on, so I can scroll around. You can also see down in the corner here, the icon turns yellow, so the user knows that they're being remote controlled. You can turn that off if you want. I've got a toolbar at the top with different activities. If I close this, now I'm viewing this all within the same console. A couple of questions that are always asked. Yes, we provide multi-monitor support. There's a hotkey to flip between monitors. Okay. The second, I can remote control multiple machines at once. I can also have multiple technicians remote into the same machine all at once for training purposes. Okay. And finally, I could just go ahead and disconnect that from here. Wish I had more to tell you about remote control, but honestly, that's all there is. Any questions about remote?
Is it Java-based?
No, that's not Java-based, not at all.
Okay, thanks.
Just the console, right? Everything outside of the console is not requiring Java at all. Well, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, which is patch management. You said today you're using Windows Update?
We are.
So that takes care of your Microsoft patches. What happens when you've got a Java or Adobe patch?
I script it.
All right. I used to be that guy. It's a lot of work, isn't it? I mean, you have to go and download the patches, and then you got to package them up and get those deployed. So what we've done is, with the Footprints Patch Manager, we have paired up with the fine folks over at Shavlik. Shavlik has a warehouse full of people that do nothing but download and package up and test patches. And so we feed off of their repository. It gets us Microsoft patches, it gets us Adobe, it gets us Java, it gets us Firefox. It is a very, very long list of patches that we can automatically pull down and deploy in your environment without any packaging whatsoever. Okay. This centralizes the patching. It uses that same replication engine. We get much better reporting. I don't know about you guys, but I never thought WAS reporting was very good. Right? And finally, I get that service anywhere technology. Gone is the argument of, well, when somebody's off the network, they might be vulnerable, and then when they come back on the network, we should shut the switch port down. No, let's not do that. How about we just deliver the patches to them when they're on the internet? And then we won't have that issue. Now, I have 2 more screenshots to show you here, because I don't have a ton of data in my own environment. But you can see, as I drill down in, I can see here are the patches. I've got machines pending install and installed, and I've got a lot of information around patches. I can see historical data here, so over time, what's our vulnerabilities and patches looking like? You saw when we were drilled into an individual asset, you saw that we could do a one-off patch. To take that more holistic approach, we do that right from here. So I've got some configuration options around patch detection, and I got two methods of creating these patch deployments. The first is just that. It is a patch for deployment. So I could come through here, I can create a patch group, and then I can start adding patches. This is for the server guys. This is when we say, I want to be in control of what patches are being delivered. I don't rely on any automation here. I'm essentially creating my own KB, right? Add this patch, add this one, and I can build that particular patch out. That's not my favorite method. My favorite method for your desktops would be patch jobs. This is much more automated. I'm going to create a patch job. Let's call this, all right. Now as I step through the wizard, all right, anytime, and actually let me do this. Let me configure this as well so you can see this. Pre-installation, messages, countdowns, quiet mode. Don't ever lock the mouse and keyboard on a patch. That's a terrible idea, but it is there for you. Reboot control is available here as well. And then what I can do is say, okay, well, critical Firefox patches. So anytime there's a critical patch, security or non-security, from the fine folks over at Firefox, there we go. The system's going to automatically react to that. I can wake devices up as part of patching. I can also say, well, Microsoft's got patch Tuesday, we've got patch Thursday. You can see I can set the system up to have devices pre-cache patches. They can pull that down ahead of time. That way, even if somebody's sitting in a living room with no internet connection and patch Thursday comes around, their machines will apply those patches. They'll just apply it from the local cache. That also means your network guys aren't going to be mad at you on patch Thursday because most of your machines will be pulling it from the local cache as opposed to everybody coming back to their relays to pull the patch at that point in time. I can define my patch windows as well. So if it's my desktops, maybe it's no end time. If it's my servers, maybe I only give them a 4-hour window to do that patch. And then finally, where are we assigning these? Here's my recommendation. Anytime now Firefox releases a critical patch, Footprints will automatically download that patch and push it out to these machines. So make this your test group or your pilot group. And you can have this send you an email to let you know that that's happened, and then maybe a week later after everybody's happy and nobody's crying or screaming, we could come back in and say, okay, now push it out to the rest of the environment.
Nice.
Okay. And
well,
yes, go ahead.
I said it's well thought out.
I did not catch that.
That's okay.
We like it.
Okay. There's a little echo coming in. Sorry about that. All right, so that leaves us, and I know we've got about 10 minutes left. Can you guys stay another 5 minutes beyond that, or do we have a hard stop in 10 minutes?
No.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, great. Because this is a big topic. This is something that I think is important, especially for you guys, you script guys there. So this would be deployment management. And deployment manager and Footprints encompasses 3 things: OS deployments, application packaging and deployments, and configuration deployments. We already saw a little bit of that with those operational rules. We're going to see more here shortly. We do have imaging capabilities. We're going to talk more about OS. We have an application kiosk, so I can set up self-service. Now, I'm not going to make a certain KB from Microsoft available in the self-service portal, but I may make a Visio viewer available, so if somebody has a Visio file, they can actually go and install that themselves without calling us. We do offer multi-platform support, so I can package up and deploy Linux deliverables, Mac OS software, as well as Windows software. So again, not just Windows-based. We do get some added items around license and application management and that Service Anywhere technology. So right from the ticket, a technician could push a piece of software over the internet to somebody's device if they need to as part of a support. Okay. What's that look like here? Remind me, I don't think you guys mentioned what you're using for operating system deployment today.
We're using the native ImageX.
Okay. Okay. So you're doing some imaging, you got an image library. Typically, if you buy a device from a manufacturer or from a vendor, you just leave what's on there, or do you wipe them all clean first?
No.
Yeah. Right.
Go ahead.
We have images. We put our own image down.
Okay, great. So you've obviously already got an image library created. If you want to keep using that, that's fine. We can also import those images right here into Footprint so we can deploy them, and that's going to give you, again, more of a centralized approach. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time in OS deployment. We could talk about this for an hour, but I will just show you here from a wizard standpoint, what do we got? I'm going to package up to the master. I can do a remote WIM image capture to capture an image of a machine. I can do a deployment. That can be an unattended setup mode, a WIM image mode, or a custom mode. Custom mode would simply be delivering the images you've already got. Okay? And as you can see on the left, there's a lot of steps as part of this wizard. So what are we going to name this? What's the architecture? What's going to happen when we're done? Are we going to use an existing image? Okay, that's great. And we would step through what about our OS drivers, our target lists, disk configuration. This does use WMI, and it lets you create a nice WMI menu. So if you're out and about, you could actually pull that up and pull an image down if you need to do that in a pinch. Okay. And if we want to talk, if we want to talk, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Question. What's the chances of running that from the console but using a relay server for the images, so you're not going across 14 subnets and you're doing it locally, if you will?
Yeah. So you have the option of replicating your images downstream to relay servers.
Great.
So absolutely, the device will be pulling from its nearest OS deployment relay for that, and for that very reason. Okay. Because you're right, that's a lot of data, isn't it? It didn't used to be. It is now.
You know, we haven't done any across the network OS deployments. We tested it, like years ago, 8 years ago or something like that. It was just too network intensive. So we've been basically doing it off of our USB drives.
Yeah, honestly, I see a lot of customers that will have maybe a high-speed switch in a closet at a location, and they'll say, well, we need to re-image, just go take that to the closet and plug it in, and then it goes.
Right.
I think this whole concept of imaging somebody's machine at their desk while they're sitting there, all completely unattended over the network, sounds great until you start doing it.
That's exactly what we found.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and technology's gotten better, right? We got multicast support, footprint support set as well. That's going to ease some of the burden, but still, you dump 2.5 gigs of Windows 7 down to a machine on a subnet. Everybody else is going to be complaining. I mean, unless you got the bandwidth to support it. So, I mean, it sounds great. Like I said, myself, I'm not a huge fan of it.
Our images are fairly large too.
Okay, so you've also tucked software in your images as well?
Yeah, we pretty much package the whole thing up.
Okay, got it. Well, then let's move on, because I definitely want to make sure we cover packaging, and I also want to make sure we cover the op rules. If you guys had more questions around OS deployment, we could talk about that at another time. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about application packaging. That's another wizard. You're probably getting sick of these wizards. We've got two different types here. A custom package. That can be anything from an executable to a Mac OS package to a Linux package. Maybe you've got an old legacy app, so we do have snapshot capabilities built in. I'm sure you're familiar with that. You take a picture of a machine, you install an app, you take another picture. The system does a differential analysis, figures out what's changed, and creates the package for you. So that's an option. Most of your packages these days are going to be MSIs, so we've separated that out right here. So let's step through this. I'm going to find an MSI. I believe I've got a couple of them here on the drive. Yep, here we go. Package up WinZip for delivery. Give that a second. That's analyzing the MSI. Now I can define my installation options. I shouldn't ever have to use run as options. We do take care of the local security for you. So if your users are locked down, I don't care, because our service is running with elevated rights. So we open up a secure pipe to initiate the installation. Okay? If I need to do anything pre-install or post-install, I can set those up here. If I want to copy additional files, I can do that. Let's just step forward. Now here would be influencing the Msi interface. Do I want this to be a silent install? Do I want them to see the status bar only? Do I want it to be full? Is this an install, a patch, a repair, an uninstall? So I can create, even if I didn't deliver an application, I can set up an uninstall package to remove it. My license key, if I've got a transform for this application, we can plug that in here. Now I can publish this to the master. Maybe I'm going to just publish it to a relay. Why would I do that? You know, this could be a Spanish version of WinZip, and so why would I want that anywhere else other than maybe pushing it to my relay in Mexico City? Okay, well I could just circumvent the whole replication thing and say this is only valid down in this particular region. Let's publish direct there. I can also make this a reference package. I'm not a huge fan of reference packages because we don't suck those source files into our own infrastructure. We just point the machines to wherever you've referenced. That's the old software share mentality. The thing with that is that it doesn't take any bandwidth throttling or what's my nearest relay or anything into consideration. It just says, oh, I'm supposed to install from whack, whatever. So not a big fan of that third option. It is there for you if you need it. This is now copying that up to the server for me. And I got two options. I can go to deploy the package or create an operational rule. I do an operational rule if I want to make this available in my service desk or if I want to do different activities as part of this deployment. Maybe when I'm done delivering WinZip, the first thing I do is I kill off the shortcut from the desktop. I make a couple registry key changes. I change a few things outside of the installation itself. I can bundle that in as part of an operational rule. Or I can go straight to deploy. Let's do this here. And you can see I can target this to devices and device groups. I can also target users and user groups. So if you had traveling users, maybe an executive, and wherever that executive logs in, he better have a shortcut to an application on his desktop. We could set that up here without using the old roaming profiles that made us all sad. Right? Okay. Here I'm going to push this to device groups. I have two options. Advertise it for interactive installation from the self-service portal, assign it for automatic installation. For this one, I'm going to advertise. Let's do that on the default schedule, which is immediately. Otherwise, I could uncheck that, and then we'd see the same scheduling dialog box from before. And I'm going to target this to all of our managed Windows computers. You're going to see right away when I hit finish, we're going to go to the package. Boom, new resource available. Now, yes, you can turn off these bubbles, but now your users actually see that they've got a new application available for them. Okay. If I drill down into this particular application, we targeted a device group. There's the device group. There are all the devices in the group. I don't have to write a report to figure out, am I 70% deployed? I can see that right here. Two machines, well, we only have two machines turned on, so they received the advertisement. It's been sent to these other machines, but they're turned off right now. I could filter this down. Show me all the machines that failed the installation. That's how easy that is. And I could right-click on any of those if I wanted to do some troubleshooting steps. If my manager is standing over my shoulder and says, what percentage are we done with this? Pie chart. I can just keep refreshing this and say, well, sir, we're 20%, 40, okay, we're 70% deployed. Okay, now we're 100% deployed. Done. So we do get that real-time feedback as opposed to having to go back, write reports, and understand how things went. If I flip over to this user machine for a second, we can see also new resources available. The user double-clicks. This takes them into the My Apps. This is opened up in Chrome. This is nothing but more than just a web browser-based console for self-service. The user can now see that they have a WinZip. I didn't do a very good job of naming it, but you get the idea. They could kick off that install right from here. We have available actions. So these are operational rules that aren't necessarily software for delivery, but still things that we want to give our users the ability to do. Maybe free up disk space. And what they don't know is behind the scenes it's killing off all their MP3s. That's up to you.
Yeah.
Installed software, I can see what's already installed here, and if I want to give the users the ability to force an app repair or an uninstall, we could give them that capability here as well. Okay? So that's an advertisement of the application. Let's go ahead and do one last thing. Let's talk about these operational rules because it sounds like you guys are doing some scripting today. I don't know why I chose 3, but I did. So here's your third op rule. Let's add some steps. This, guys, is the scripting without the scripting. I can pretty much touch every byte of a machine without doing any coding whatsoever. We can see I've got a hierarchy here if I want to take a look at things around hardware inventory, things around monitoring or master steps, things around patch management or process management. If I go to all here, you're going to see that a really long list of things that I can do with these machines. Okay. Now, if you've already created VB scripts or you've already created Java or PowerShell, we can become a script host as well, and then we can deliver those. Okay. I'm just going to do a quick search. Let's say the first thing I'm going to do is kill a process. Process management, end of process, Notepad's still running on that machine, so let's kill it. Done. Now the next thing I'm going to do maybe is a registry entry. I'm not going to actually go all the way through this, but notice here I can do registry management. I can add, modify, delete, change keys right from here. How about we go through and create a directory? That's a good one. I'm going to create a directory. I can use variables here if I want to. In this case, I'm going to create a folder called Napa, Napa County. All right, I'm going to stick with just these two, but if I wanted to do a message box to a user, plenty of things around message boxes. And you could see as I went through each of these, loop all verification fails. Well, maybe don't perform verification. It's successful. So I can influence the order of these and what's classified as success versus failure, and do we step on to the next thing or just terminate the whole project altogether?
Change a shortcut?
Yeah, I could create a shortcut, of course.
Can you change one? Or I guess you could delete and add it, couldn't you?
You could delete and add. That's what I would do. So now that I've got this, let's finish this up. Yes, we're going to deploy this. In this case, I'm going to target it just to a device. I'm going to assign it for automatic deployment to happen immediately. And let's just do a search for a device called client. There it is. Okay, finish. And we're going to go to that operational rule. Now we can see it's assigned. I'm going to keep poking refresh here, and it's going to make its way through to being executed. This, by default, typically takes 1 to 3 minutes when we stick with the default here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to wrap up this call. I'm going to see if there's any additional questions or comments or feedback, all while we continue watching this. And once it's successful, I will flip over and show you what that end result is. So with that, you thought you guys got a lot of information thrown at you yesterday. Today was no different. In fact, we probably threw even more at you today. Is there anything that you wanted to see or thought you were going to see that you didn't get to see?
Not for me. What about you,
No,
Ron?
not for me. I think we got to see what we wanted to see and more. It was a great presentation today.
So can you run through one more time the packages? We have a compliance package which includes a whole bunch of stuff.
Sure.
And we've got a deployment package that includes a whole bunch of stuff. What are the other packages?
Okay.
Or how is it packaged? How is it marketed? How is it?
So if we look down below here, each of these would be most of these are standalone modules. Inventory Manager would be the discovery and inventory. That's where we started.
Right.
We have Compliance Manager, and Compliance Manager included remember the power management and the device management, right? So we've got the Remote Manager. That was the piece that was the remote control and those direct access tools.
So the remote Manager is a separate package.
Correct. So inventories here are your separate packages.
Okay.
Inventory, compliance, remote, patch, and deployment. Those are the 5 modules.
Okay.
Okay. Now, they can be sold all separately. They can also be sold all together as a suite. David or Mark, do one of you want to chime in? I don't know if these guys have been presented a quote yet, and if so, what was on the quote? They have not? Okay.
They have not.
I
think when we spoke, David, and we talked about that being a suite, that we encourage the suite, right? Basically, all the value that you saw, right? but it's up to you, especially from an asset management perspective, right? If we're gonna sell you the service core, it's gonna be better off the suite because it's gonna include the CMDB, it's gonna include the incident problem change and the self-service portal and so forth. And from an asset core perspective, it's gonna allow you to populate those assets into the CMDB and utilize the CI Explorer.
Right. So on the asset side, guys, you mentioned, hey, we use something for patch. If you're happy with that for the patch, then I would say go a la carte and eliminate the patch. I will tell you that when David says that you're incented to go down the suite path, that would be a pricing incentive, right? So when we bundle these things all together, the cost for each module tends to be lower in the suite pricing versus the a la carte pricing.
Yeah, that's what we would expect.
Right.
What I was considering is that it's to hit the ground running with all the different packages may be difficult. I mean, it may be that it's going to take us a year to get everything up on just the service manager package and the asset management, and before we could even get to the patching.
Right, right. So here's what I see as the most commonly purchased together, right? When you're looking at Service Desk, I would say your phase one then would be the service management suite that you guys already talked about,
right.
and inventory and compliance manager, those two.
Okay.
Because that's going to give you that ability to, from a ticket, see, oh, hey, here's the computer that person called in about, and here's the information right in the ticket, and I can look at inventory data, and it sounds to me like you guys aren't overly impressed with what you're using today for asset inventory, so let's also knock that one out, right, because Inventory Manager does that for you as well, with that compliance piece on top of it to get you some of those added capabilities and some of the license management that, while you may not go down that path at day one, I would still recommend you implement that day one. And then you can start saying, well, look at these 4 remote tools we have. Remember in the demo how great that was? Maybe we're going to pull that and go, phase 2 will add patch and remote. Or maybe, remote's super easy. Remote takes mere minutes to set up. Maybe, all right, we'll lump remote in with that initial purchase, but then patch and deployment will do as a phase 2.